Hello! You are listening to Talking Utter Slot, the podcast that believes slot cars are more fun if you don't take them too seriously. In this week's episode, we'll be discussing paint in various forms, be it paint on a new release, white kits that are ready to be painted, and Nick's been painting wheels. There's also a lovely little story about a young chap, only 8 years old, being voted by his fellow competitors as most gentlemanly driver. A lesson for us all. Hello, and welcome to this edition of Talking Utter Slot. My name is Scott.
And I'm Nick, and this week we're going to be talking about what's caught our eye in the slot world.
And with the Haven't Swap meet coming up in just a few days, we'll be looking forward to what we're hoping to see there. Or at least I will, because you're not going, are you?
No, I'm not going. I'm going to Italy instead, where I've got some teenage boys who want to drive rally cars in the future.
That sounds like you've got teenage... No, you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to say you're not old enough, but that would be... Anyway, well, on the upside, the food is almost certainly going to be better wherever you are in Italy compared to the Havant Sports Centre, but there'll be more slot cars. So anyway, I will report back and see what we can find. Big issue, that's wrong, that's building it up. But, the thing which has really caught a lot of eyes, almost literally, actually, is the paint finish on the new Scalextric Dragon Speed Cobra. I think it's a Dragon Speed, Dragon something anyway.
Yeah.
Now this, in real life, this was a Cobra which was built for drag racing, and it had a metallic pink, purpley pink finish. So real car, all that sort of thing. In fact, I think it's been converted to kind of circuit spec and is now running at Goodwood occasionally. So the real car does exist and been in the UK. Model was announced ages ago. Sample was shown back in May at the Slot Festival. Looked lovely. I mean, what's surprising is that Pendle, who are, I'm going to say, arguably, the biggest slot retailer in the UK, posted pictures of the model on their Facebook page. Nothing unusual in that. But they chose to do so by saying, we've checked with Scalextrics and this paint finish, which looks very lumpy, bumpy, shall we call it that?
It's got a bit of acne, hasn't it?
It's got something's odd. Anyway, I've never known a retailer to effectively announce the availability of a new model by going, the paint finish is, I'm going to say crap. Pendle didn't say crap. Pictures we could have zoomed in. What do you reckon? You're a painter. What do you reckon?
Yeah. I feel for Scalextric and I feel for Pendle on this one. Obviously, they're sort of at the coalface in that people are going to receive their lovely boxes of cars that they ordered months ago when they saw the catalogue. And it's going to be Sean and the guys not answering the phone, because they don't, but they will answer their emails very rapidly when people are going, yeah, it's not right, and sending their models back. And you see this all the time, not so much on the forums, but on Facebook and whatever, where people are saying, I've sent this car back. Like, here's why I'm sending it back. They'll post a photo, and that's why. Some I have more sympathy with than others, but clearly there's been a bit of an error somewhere, because obviously Scalextric now does whole body water transfers effectively, and when it works, you can understand why. I mean, you need to look at the Tartan Porsche 911, which could only be done by wrapping it, and those cars are, a game changer in terms of what liveries you can do. And as somebody who regularly repaints cars, my own handiwork, I wouldn't be happy with what we've seen. I know my stuff is far short of many of the great scratch builders in the hobby, but that's a bit of an issue. And obviously, hopefully, everyone's working a way to resolve it. I'm sure that Pendle will be firing boxes back at Scalextric from unhappy customers. I'm sure that Scalextric will be talking to suppliers, and I'm sure it will get resolved. But yeah, it's not helpful for anybody, is it?
It's a kind of, I guess there's, with production being overseas, China, I guess, in this instance, they all get made, however many of them there are. Let's say there's a couple of thousand for this, I don't know, but let's say there's a couple of thousand of them. They get made, they get put in boxes, they get put in a shipping container, and they get sent over. So the first anybody knows there's a problem is when they open that first one out of the container. And if they're all the same, and we don't know they're all the same, there's not much you can do about it, really, because, it's not the sort of thing where... a great example, so sister company Airfix recently, much beloved, launched or reissued a kit of the Bond bug, the orange little cheese wedge thing, which was last released in 1972 or 73 or something. And quite quickly, everybody was... I pre-ordered it the minute I saw it was coming, so it was 7-8 months till it arrived. Internet was alive with people going, "Oh, I've got it, but this bit seems to be wrong. There seems to be a short flush on one of the mold pieces." Literally, you contacted Airfix customer service, you sent them a picture of it, sent them the code off the box, which gave them the production batch number, and I guess to track you back to production. And I think a day later, certainly no more than 2 days later, a replacement part arrived. And you go, fantastic, isn't that wonderful? So, completely responded to it, and I have got what I needed. But that was one tiny bit of plastic. This is a complete, slot car. What are they going to do? They're going to issue a new body? They can't, can they? I don't know. We'll find out, I guess.
That's not really our job to speculate on that. It's just a nightmare you feel for everyone concerned, because, okay, if you really want a pink Cobra, maybe you need your head red anyway. It's probably, really?
Yeah. Said the man from customer service.
No, it's like they've done the other, the Snake Eyes one. Why? It just doesn't look right. Might as well stick a cartoon Dick Dastardly figure in it or something,
I think it helps that it's a real car. And I believe it. So I think that works, actually. That would be one of the ones, if I was going to buy one, that's one of the ones I would probably buy, actually. Just
it
because
should be, light metallic blue, white stripes. That's a Cobra.
Okay, all right. Anyway, so I guess I'm going to say our sympathies. That's maybe the wrong thing, because that sounds like... But, I guess people down in Margate are having a tough couple of days, if that's what they've got to deal with. And up in Pendle. What else have you seen? What's piqued your interest?
Well, it's been a busy time for Slotted / Polycar of late. A number of reissues, but as is always the way with Slotted, whenever a new member joins our club, and we run Slotted Group Cs, or Slotteds are eligible for various different classes, and we run a Slotted DTM. And if anyone says, "Oh, which car should I buy?" you always say the most recent release, because Maurizio is an engineer, and he likes tinkering with his designs, and so there's always something. It could be a chamfer around the guide hole. It could be, a couple of grams off the weight of the thing, or moving that weight down. There's always something with every issue of a car, which gives it a reason to buy it for racing as much as a reason to buy it because it's a nice livery or whatever. So bringing out more Porsche 956s, does he really need to? No. I've got 60 of them. But yeah.
Are you trying to recreate that poster? Is that effectively what's happened? That there's a subliminal ability?
Basically, yeah, that is in the back of my mind. I did a book about Porsche 956, 962, and it was probably my favourite thing that I've ever done. And I got to sort of see lots of the real cars up close that I watched as a child being taken to circuits.
You're only 10 years younger. Don't rub it in.
Well, exactly. I can remember every race. The 82 Silverstone race, when the Porsche 956, it wasn't that much of a landmark for me. I was more interested in the Momo Porsche Moby Dick that was running around in the back of the pack, because that was a Moby Dick. That was a really exciting thing. New Porsche, yeah, whatever. And my dad really loved the Lanciers, because he was just anything in a Martini livery, he was all over. So, didn't make that much of an impression. But over the years, and let's face it, it was a dozen years that the car was as competitive, it was just part of life. Twice a year, Brands and Silverstone, or sometimes Silverstone and Donington. You get to see the things in action. Loved them. So it's always been a thing. And now Slotted has brought out the Senna livery, which was always going to happen. Maybe Maurizio has a bigger Christmas card list this year and he needs to invest more heavily. I don't know. But that's, clearly a car with Senna in it, and that's that pretty in the Newman livery. That's clearly sold out already, I'm sure. And if it hasn't, give it a day or two. Then there is the same short tail, which has come out or is coming out Q1 next year in the Canon livery from late 84, which is a historically important car because Richard Lloyd Racing rebuilt the chassis. So originally it was aluminium, straightforward aluminium, sheet aluminium, and it was a bit wobbly and a bit flexible, but it was good enough at the time. But then Jonathan Palmer, who was the lead driver, sort of wrote an A4 sheet, which I've seen, of all the things he wanted to change. And one thing was, get rid of the tub, it's horrible, it's flexy, and make one out of honeycomb, which is much stiffer, which is what they did. And sure enough, they were right at the front. So it's a historically important car because lots of teams after that built their own chassis, but it was the first one. So that's it. And it's a gorgeous livery. And then there's a white kit, which having 60 slottits means that I've gone through an awful lot. And if anyone's currently looking for a white tail, a long tail, whatever, white kit, I'm sorry, I've probably got it. So, yeah, a white kit is always sort of like catnip to me, particularly when it's Porsche shaped. So, yeah, that's out too. And it looks like a very reasonable price at most retailers, it has to be said. So, yeah, there's lots of liveries out there that you can do. They're normally fairly simple. And, yeah, go for it. And in the meantime, Polycar side, speaking of white kits, the Ferrari 126C2 is out as a white kit, which I think is one that you've been hankering for, so you can do a...
I've been resisting buying one. I'm doing quite well. I mean, I don't resist very often, it must be said. So I've been resisting. White kit is not my thing. I mean, it would just remain a white kit forever. I mean, I've even got an SRC McLaren, which is all already painted. You just got to assemble it, and I haven't assembled that. So, but that model of that Ferrari, I'm kind of waiting on. I think probably a Tombi one, either that or a Peroni with a normal wing. And I know I could probably swap stuff anyway. But I think a Tombi one might be quite nice. I mean, I'm like everybody my age, Gilles was the kind of the hero of the day at the time and all that sort of thing. And as I said before, there's a portrait of him hanging over the fire. It's not a shrine; it's just a poster. But yeah, I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. That car it's not nothing to do with whether it's because he died in it and all that kind of stuff. Just fine. There are other helmets that might be more interesting, and I'm sure, given the way things work, Slotted will get round, or Polycar, will get round to issuing every conceivable variation of that car. But the white kit, unusually for me, is so semi-attractive because I love 1982 Grand Prix cars. That was right in the middle of me being at university when I was still vaguely harbouring dreams of becoming the next Patrick Head. So I got a folder full of sort of drawn Formula One cars. I must have been the only, well, I wasn't quite a teenager at that point, but I must have been one of the very few teenagers who ran to the bookshop and bought the FIA little yellow book of rules every year so that I could amend my the dimensions, etc., on my little Formula One and Group C cars. All of which is preamble to saying, it's not that different, funnily enough, because I wasn't that creative. It's not that different to the cars I was drawing. And with a huge stretch of imagination and talent, I could probably do the livery that I had on my Formula One cars. So it's kind of bowed, because all of that there's so many if, maybe, buts in there. But the fact that it's the only one that's come to that. Going back to the Porsches, though, I'm sure there are, but are there any... I was going to say good. Are there any good liveries that haven't already been done?
Oh, lots.
Was that
lots
okay?
and lots. I've done Most of my collection is liveries that I've done, which Slotted hasn't. I can grab a couple. So this is my all-time favourite. It's a very simple, plain one.
Remember to describe those for those not watching on.
For those not watching on the telly box, this is the 1987 number one car from Le Mans. So it uses the 962-85 body from Slotted, and it's painted in a particular shade of green, which was actually the colour used on Ford Fiestas in 1976. And it was. I know.
Is this meticulous guesswork, or is that just meticulous research, or is it just guesswork?
No, I asked somebody at Brunn, or somebody who had been at Brunn. I said, "Look, that was the car that stood out for me. That was my favourite. What was that colour? Because it was amazing, and I think it's the same colour that Vic Lee later used on his BMWs.
It looks very. I asked Vic because I was working with him at the time, and he told me, possibly unreliably, that they just mixed some stuff up until they got a colour they liked. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I know when they were actually, I think when Ray Bellm at the time was running a little model car company, the 143rd. I'll forget the name, Piccolino, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they must have got the right colour. If anybody was going to get the right colour, it would be him. So I think I ordered I think I got somebody to paint one for me way back then. So somewhere I've got a modified, probably, would it be a Mini Champ? Something like that anyway, that was painted, and I put the decals on it. But it does look the same, yeah. It's a very, not quite Leighton House. It's sort of Leighton House is a little bit more vibrant, isn't it? But it's a similar sort of green, that one.
Yes, yeah, it's a bit greener than the Leighton House. But yeah, I mean, so obviously there's a new white kit. It's the 956 short tail, which I think is the prettiest of all of them. I'd be tempted to get one and do the Henry Toivonen livery, because he drove one. It was a works car in Finland in like a super saloons race. It was ridiculous. He won it by like 20 laps. But it was, although it was all paid for by Rothmans, it ran with some Finnish TV station in place of Rothmans on the Rothmans livery. So, presumably cigarette advertising wasn't a thing in Finland in the 80s, because they're very forward-looking, the Finns. Anyway, so that's one that I've sort of wanted to do for ages, and I've sort of talked myself out of it. Now there's no more white kits left, and that's a white kit. So the Ferrari less so for me, because it's the car Gilles died in, and it was the most horrible thing. And then Pironi had a horrible accident, and whilst it was the prettiest Ferrari, one of the prettiest ever, I just can't get over the fact that it's Gilles' car, and I'm disappointed in a way. I understand it now from Maurizio and others have said that, well, in Italy, a model of the car your favourite driver died in is a tribute to that driver. That's the Italian way of looking at it. I'm like, I don't want that car. Why would I want that car? Why? I don't get why people sort of associate the number 27 when he won those races in 81, but he did more with the number 12 on the car than he ever did with the number 27. So it's a gorgeous car anyway. And if you want to have a Tombe or an Andretti or anyone, you can now do it yourself. And also, there's a new Nissan, or a repaint of the existing Nissan R89, which is the three Brits who competed at Le Mans in 89, Julian Bailey and Mark Blundell, and I've gone blank. Who was the third one? It doesn't matter, because he didn't get to drive the car and he lasted 5 laps. Jules, sadly,
it wasn't Jeff Lees, was it? No, he was usually in the Toyota at that point. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. No, it was. Oh, it's gone.
Someone can put it in the comments.
They were all part of the Rat Pack. So there was Damon Hill, there was Blundell, there was Jules, there was Johnny Herbert, and the Stig. They were all mates and raced together and everything else, and 3 of them got in this Nissan, and Mark Blundell did a stonking qualifying lap, and Jules took it out at the start of the race, and I think it completed 5 laps and he went off. which at the time everyone's sort of very sanguine about it because you'd rather go off in the first hour than the last hour, so it's all fine. Um,
I'm sure the team management weren't that sanguine, but yeah, I remember.
yeah. It's got Blundell's helmet in the car, which is a bit of a shame because Jules never gets the attention he deserves, having got to F1 the hard way, and put some doggy cars through their paces far quicker than they should have gone. But he had a good career, and it's nice to see him being reflected in slot form anyway.
It's interesting that because it's the red, white, and blue livery, which I think is the best one on that car, isn't it? The sort of But I'm surprised. I must confess, when I saw that was being released, I thought, well, they've already issued that one. But obviously, it was the other two because there was 3 works cars.
Yes, because number 23 is good luck, isn't it? In Japanese, so 23 is always the lead Nissan, and then 24 will, that's the sort of number 2 car.
And just to round off, there's an awful lot coming out of Italy this last year. So on Polycar, there's a Piper, so another green car, very green, the David Piper Ferrari 412, or as I would call it, a P4. But I know that you purists would shout at me, but it looks like a P4, smells like a P9. Looks very green in the pictures. I mean, it's maybe it's because I'm used to seeing old pictures of it when it was dirty. It never looked that bright and shiny in any of the pictures I saw. But but yeah, I was tempted because I think I've got a fly. No, I haven't. Not fly. Didn't do that. What? It must be a what's the Piper? No, I haven't got Scalextric's one. No.
Racer.
I've got a green Piper. What was that? What would that be? A fly? That would be a Lola, wouldn't it? Sorry, confusing myself.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, it's green, but they all look the same. Anyway, enough of those things. We'll be interested to see what out of all of that is at Havant on Sunday. It may be a little bit too soon for some of it. I shall be particularly.
Probably you'll see some Senna cars. That's out.
Well, yeah, they could. I think you're right. I think they'll go pretty quickly. It's pretty. It's got Senna in it. I don't know how many.
Watch people fighting over the last one.
Well, like I said to you, I think there's a market in Senna helmets for the Scalextric Lotuses. So, begs the question why it's in that. Why the decorated helmet is on the inside of
eBay my Scalextric Lotus, by the way.
Why, you're disillusioned or you just don't like it?
Yeah, I took the magnet out, and that was an error.
No, it just drives like a really peaky turbo engine.
No, it doesn't drive at all. It just sits there spinning its wheels on Ninko. Obviously, our Ninko track's a little bit bumpy and beaten up, but yeah, it just sits there going, no, sorry, you have to go.
Different tyres. Try different tyres. Anyway, you've distracted that threw me completely to talking about that. Anyway, other couple of things. So I was going to say, I'd be interested to see if there are. Well, I'd be interested to see in the flesh, as it were, the Dragon Cobra, just to see what the paint finish is actually like, and to see if it's already being discounted. I suspect that might be the case. Something else that caught my eye, which is slightly unusual, and I'm going to have to refer to something so I don't get it completely wrong. Which is, I spotted this on Facebook, and it's just lovely. And I'll put the picture on the thing. But from Slot Car Mods, which they call themselves Everybody's Slot Car Magazine, I think it's a North American thing. Anyway, it's announcing that there was a competition sponsored by SRC in Canada, I'm guessing. And it's the most gentlemanly driver who took part. And the wonderful thing is, it's a happy, smiling young lad called Brock, and he's young, he's only 8. And the other drivers in the competition voted for who they thought was the most gentlemanly driver, and it was him, which is fantastic. And encouraging kids coming along, and everybody could do with being gentlemanly when they're racing. But the really great thing is, he got a trophy, he got a Los Calaberos CD. I have no idea the significance of Los Calaberos, but he got that anyway. And an SRC
band.
Are they? He got an SRC BMW 2.8 chrono kit, which not bad. For being nice is definitely worth doing. Let's face it.
Definitely for one of those SRC kids. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So be nice, madam. Next time I'm shouting.
Bought.
Next time I'm shouting at next time I'm shouting at a marshal, I can hear them going, yeah. I never shout at marshals. Well, only when they drop my Mark II Escort. I'm naming no names. There's a bit of a paint theme actually. I'm gonna segue almost seamlessly if it wasn't for the fact that we'd planned it. You've been painting lots of things this week, haven't you?
I have. I've been painting slightly insane things in that they are wheels. So I love old front-engined Grand Prix cars. I was brought up by a father who was completely intoxicated by these things, and happily so. So I've got a little pre-war collection and a little post-war collection, and I've been adding to those a couple of years ago now. And they're the sorts of kits that you sort of roost on and have to sort of summon up the courage, because the ones I've done recently are George Turner kits, and George sort of does a very limited run and then he takes them out of circulation. So the kits that I've got are out of circulation and have been for 4 or 5 years. I bought them as a job lot from Peter Seegert Thomas, who is in Ifold and runs a club there, and he also makes exquisite perfect scale replica wheels for this generation of cars, and he'll spot the difference between one spoke type to another spoke type. Slot car manufacturers get it close enough to be right, so you can look at a Scalextric van wall and go, yeah, well, that looks like it should, sort of a thing. I'll have one of those, lovely. But then you talk to the experts and they're all very upset. And Peter dedicated himself to producing wheels for 30s to 50s Grand Prix cars, which were 100% right. So I bought these cars and I picked up some of his wheels. Again, his wheels are largely out of production. And they are incredibly complex beasts, because the hub sort of separates into two, and there's an inner ring as well. And then into this, you have to have a central sort of a spline, onto which you then put the photo etch spokes, and it's anything up to like 84, I think, is the most on any of individual wheel. So 3 sheets of etch, basically, super glued very carefully using a pinhead, so you're not getting any on the spokes. And yeah, it's quite mind-bending stuff. Totally new challenge, totally nice new thing to do. Never again. Absolutely never again. Even if Peter goes into production again, no. I'm sorry. I love them dearly, but no, that's too much for me.
So
I need a safe word at this point. No.
Step away from the spoke wheel. Step away from the spoke wheel. It's fun. I mean, I saw you posted some pictures on Facebook and stuff, but and definitely worth the effort. I think I think it'll be something that once
100%.
you're.
I mean, it's a passion project for a man who knows his wheels, and it's a remarkable thing to have done. I'm really glad to have a very small number of his wheels and to have actually sort of summoned up the whatever required to have a go at putting them together. But yeah, that's me done.
Yeah, you've got to do, and I'm just doing this. It's a bit. I remember putting the tire decals on Tamiya Grand Prix kits, which was always, or painting. Even the old days, put painting the letters, and it was always quite thrilling because it was one of those things that really made the model pop. And but of course, you had to do 4 tires on both sides, so it was just like doing you have the thrill of doing the first one, and then god, yeah. So you've got to do all those. It reminds me of that again. A sort of hat tip to another slot YouTuber. So Swift Slots, Rob Bushell, who does some great stuff about. He's a great maker of things, and I wouldn't think of he's a proper engineer, I think, really. But he's the particular rabbit hole that I've fallen down this last week, he bought a second-hand Fly Group 5 Capri.
Hmm.
And it looks fine. It's missing a wing mirror, but it's all there and it goes. I think he was missing one braid, but he put a new braid in. Now, if that had been me, I'd have gone, great, I've got another slot car, I'll maybe put some new tyres on it. I'll run it, that's fine. Not Rob. He said, I think I can make it a bit better. So he's there, and I don't want to spoil it, but I really encourage go to YouTube channel and it's Swift Slots, and you'll see. I think he's up to part 2 at the minute. I think he's promised when he set off. I think there was going to be 1 film, but there's so much involved. It's going to end up being 3, which sounds daunting, but it isn't. But he's, as well as remaking the chassis, he's using the existing chassis, but he's taking bits away and adding bits. He's repairing the body. He's repainting the body. He's wheels, but the wheels, which are lovely on those models, are big, fat, wide thing. He's got aluminium wheels, which are meant for sponge tyres, so they're completely flat, no ridge in the middle to hold the tyre. He's turned down the Fly inserts to get them in, which is not easy because it's got to take the axle coming through it, and that's got to be slightly different. And he's made a sleeve, he's turned an aluminium sleeve that goes over the top of this sponge alloy wheel to create a ridge so that the original Fly tyres will fit. And then, for good measure, he's just made his own tyres as well. It's mesmerising to watch. It's just lovely. So I picture you building these wheels as much as you should have stuck a camera over the desk. You can always edit out the expletives, I'm sure.
I was tempted to do a sort of a stop motion or whatever the setting is on your iPhone and film myself building one of these wheels just so I'd have something to show my grandchildren. But I didn't in the end. It was too sweary for words without a camera on me. So.
Have the wheels now been united with a car? Have you got a...
I haven't got the right size axles in as much as all the ones I've got are either too narrow or too broad, so it sits there looking like a modern F1 car. And I've got no tyres yet because the correct size tyres, amongst other things, are available from a particular online retailer, RS Slot Sport, RS Slot Racing. Colin Spark, who runs that, is a lovely chap, and he really is dedicated to the older cars. So he stocks things like the immense miniatures heads of Grand Prix drivers, beautifully rendered, like Fangio and Nuvolari and James Hunt and whoever. All the odd-sized wheels. He's got restoration parts, for Marklin or whatever, tyres and things like that, and also ones that fit Peter's wheels. So he's going to be a next stop as and when I have a bit of slot car funding available.
I'm waiting on tyres slightly less exotic than yours because, as you know, I was having a bit of a rally to myself the other week, and I think quite a lot of my SCX cars now need new tyres. And so, but my usual supplier doesn't seem to have any, and they've got the wider, that standard rally car tyre for SA. I mean, it was on so many models, wasn't it? And so yeah, I'll need to get some of them, and then I shall rerun my rally and see who's doing better. I managed to get some.
I need to get tyres for is my Bastos Peugeot 206, which is a top slot kit that I got.
Wow, that's nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's very pretty. And it's on a Ninko chassis because Top Slot, well, they're 20 years old. They use Ninko as the base. It's on a Peugeot 306 Ninko chassis. And I found some of those Ninko DTM wheels, which go on it perfectly. And they look like the right ones for an asphalt rally in 2003. Yep. But, it needs tyres. I'm like, oh, darn, that's another thing that needs doing.
Well, there's always a list. Talking of things acquired, I'm going to lead you. I'm going to lead the duty here. You showed me things that you managed to find on holiday.
Yes, we talked about things we bought, and I don't really buy much, but we did go to France on holiday and pitched a tent next to a river in a campsite, so that was okay. It wasn't fly camping. And
This looks a nice spot. I'll stick the tent right.
I declare this, run the flag up, it's ours now.
Actually, you've just reminded me. One of the times I went with my eldest to Le Mans, we made a very last-minute decision to go when you could, and we drove over. So he was only, I can't remember, he wasn't even just a teenager maybe, and so we got somewhere in France, kind of on the way, and we pulled into this kind of service station halt thing. I said, "Well, we'll find somewhere to pitch the tent because it was dark, and found a bit of grass by the car and pitched the tent. And in the morning, it was on a grass verde, like an island in the middle of the car park. But we were gone fairly quickly, so it wasn't too bad. Sorry, I interrupted. Just a flash of memory.
I got dragged into a toy shop at one stage by the kids. They were actually...
How much dragging did you need?
To be honest, they were going completely berserk, and we just needed to find something to calm them down. So, that was fine. And it turned out that they were stopping selling slot cars, and they sold SCX, so they were selling off their remaining stock. And they were selling off cars that had been on display. So I think it was 24 euros for a boxed car and 17 euros for an unboxed car. So I came away with, and audio listeners will just have to bear with us on this, the Ford Fiesta WRC in the livery carried by Mikkel Kosciuszko in the Jordan Rally in 2012. He was actually competing in WRC 2, so this should actually be an R5 car. But it's very pretty, and it's white and black. And we run an SCX four-wheel drive class at the club, and the Fiesta is always a car to beat. It's always one of the quickest ones out there. It's got the smaller, slightly torquier motor, which was introduced with the Lancia Delta Integrale, but that had a terrible chassis, so you never knew how good the engine was. The Delta S4 had that engine and is one of the best cars in four-wheel drive SCX. And so too does the Fiesta. And this one, which is the Citroen DS3 WRC. So I got these two cars for 34 euros, brand spanking new, from basically they've just been in a showcase for some years. But I thought that's a pretty good.
That was a good find. It reminds me of the old days, pre-internet. I mean, the internet's wonderful for lots of things. But of course, the old days, you would go and visit somewhere, and I always said I had a kind of spidey sense. You could sort of tell that's the kind of street that'll have a model shop in it, and you would sort of go down and find somewhere. And on sort of foreign trips with work, I was always kind of venturing off, and it's great. I've still got cars, and I can pick them up and remember, I remember I was in such and such a place, and I got that, or found that in XY place. So that's great that you've got those are great little mementos of those, I think. Wonderful. But just so rare to now find anywhere, never mind, getting rid of them anywhere that's open.
And clearly in that part of France, you won't find one anymore because they were selling off their remaining stock. So
yeah, that's a shame. Interesting that it was SCX though. That's the yeah. Because that's so there isn't really a sideways are French, I think, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, they had got some of the WRC, the 143rd sets. But that's 143rd.
Rally country, you see. There was more, but I guess it was because it's rally country, so rally slot car. That's probably the way in. Well, I've also bought some rally cars, but I won't do the SCX Puma, which I think is a lovely thing. And as we were saying earlier, the complexity of that body shape and the complexity of the livery, and it looks, to my relatively untrained eye on that car, it looks absolutely perfect. I think it goes fine. The rubber band front wheel drive, it de-slots occasionally if you give it lean on it on a corner, but
it's painful to hear of SCX doing band driven, though, isn't it? After all those glorious years of shaft driven.
It's because they want to get the chip space for the chip, the digital chip back in. But more encouragingly, I was tempted by, as I know you have been as well, the reissue Avant slot reissues of old Spirit cars.
Yeah.
But unlike you, I'm not going to buy white kits and paint them because see earlier comments. Anyway, and I was hovering over the Golfs, and then I found online somebody selling them for about the same price as would have been an Monster lot. So I thought I would lump again. So again, apologies to those not viewing. I'm holding up a Golf Mark 1 with some wide wheel arches and some very nice two-part spoked wheels. And it's sort of red and orange and yellow and white. And I don't actually know what the car is, but it's, hold it in front of the camera. It's famous to me, and I blame the 1979 Tamiya catalogue, because they had, I think, both a radio-controlled model of this and I think a static kit of it. So back in those days, I mean, we would never have seen a picture of, a low division racing car that was from another country. You barely ever saw Formula One cars in colour, never mind these. So I had no knowledge of it, but obviously 50 years worth of subliminal desire has meant. So I got that. It needs a crown wheel, and having got it and found it delightful, I thought, well, I've got to get the rally one as well. So I managed to find somewhere selling. In fact, it was Pendle was selling off. Don't know where. It was almost like a little time machine. They'd sort of gone back in time, found some old stuff that was still brand new. So I'm now holding up another Mark 1 Golf, this time in regular body shape, and it's a rally car, black with a yellow and green BP stripe. I think they own lovely little wheels, too wide, but the hubs are. Oh, I'm really not holding it in front of the camera. Focusing on that. Go on. No, it's not going to do it. It is the noisiest slot car I have ever. I stopped as soon as I started because I thought that sounds like I'm breaking something. Put lots of lube and oil and stuff on it, but no, that's just it goes fine, but the noise is torturous. Anyway, the real joy, and I'm conscious of time, but yesterday, the postman delivered the most beautiful slot car ever. Asterisk until the next one. I'm again holding it up, which is the Polycar BRM in the Marlboro livery, as it won the 1972 Monaco Grand Prix.
Those front wheels look a bit high up, Scott.
No. This is true. The front wheels don't touch the track, and they're quite stiff. So I think if they did touch the track, it would slow it down. This is the aforementioned. We started off talking about paint on a Scalextric's car. Yep. Now, I mean, that issue looks quite serious, but it's funny how there are some things. I think there's some things. A Polycar car comes out and the wheels don't touch the track, and I, for one, and I think a lot of others go, yeah, don't mention that's fine. It's just it's a lovely model. And then Scalextric or Carrera do something, and we all go, the wing mirrors are the wrong shape or something or other. But the significance of this car. Sorry, can't say it again.
Scalextric Falconry.
Yes, we won't go into that right now. But the significance of this model for me was, very briefly, because 1973-74, I don't know exactly when, I was given a calendar, but it was an old calendar. It had been hanging on somebody's office wall the previous year. So I got given it, and it was full of prints by Michael Turner. And it had Concorde and some planes in it, but it also had a lot of Grand Prix cars. Stuart's Tyrrell, Fittipaldi GPS, which I knew and loved from my Corgi models. But it also had a painting of that car, which I didn't know what it was, winning at Monaco. And I just loved that painting. And it stayed on my bedroom wall through my teenage years, and I've probably still got it dog-eared somewhere in some of that. And then sort of 10 years later, there was a book of Michael Turner paintings, and I bought that, and I've got that. So this, in a way, I've been waiting for 50 years for this slot car to arrive. And so I am absolutely delighted with it. Well done, Maurizio and Maurizio. Thank you. That's made me very happy. Right then, have you anything else you want to
I think we're
confess
to
buy? Yeah, I think so.
We're
getting good at this.
I'll ask you to keep a lookout. Actually, I'm asking everyone to keep a lookout when they go to the swap meet. Is a Ninko Mini Cooper and the SCX Hyundai i20 in the Danny Sordo livery, which for some reason seems to now be like 80 quid everywhere. So if anyone's got one at a reasonable price, then I'm asking everyone that's going, can you just grab it and I'll pay you back? Those are my two sort of wish list items. Everything else I want at the moment these days is kits. So those are the two yeah, just keep an eye out for those. What else are you going to be looking for, though? Is there anything that you're sort of hankering?
Oh, well, that's the joy. I'll go there and vaguely looking for tyres for something. I come away with 6 cars or something that I never thought I wanted, or I'll find something that's cheap. But that's the joy of going. Or sometimes just go and talk rubbish to people, because that's kind of what I do.
What? Talk to people.
Right, we better wrap up. If you've listened this far, I hope you've enjoyed. If you haven't listened this far, I don't care. So I'll say goodbye, and Nick.
See you soon. Thank you.
Cheers, everybody.